When I was in college, one of my professors had on his office wall a framed Boston Marathon medal. It was the first time I ever considered running a marathon. 36 years later, I've run a few. And I've learned some valuable lessons from the experiences. The lessons apply to marathons, but they also apply to other areas of life. I'm going to tell you about 3 marathons, the lessons I learned from them, and how those lessons are relevant in other areas. The 3 lessons are: get started, take some risk, and finish strong. Not everybody runs marathons, but most of us have a goal that we're working toward or that we dream about. What is your goal? If achieving it requires time, commitment, and effort, maybe it is your marathon. What do you want to do? What would fill you with a sense of achievement, satisfaction, and pride? Let's call that your achievement marathon. In a larger context, we're all running the same marathon called life. It's a long journey full of excitement and pain and challenges. Think about your marathon in your life as I tell a few stories. I'll be using a few running acronyms: PR, BQ, and DNF. PR stands for personal record. That means you run your best time to date. BQ means running a Boston Marathon qualifying time. And DNF stands for did not finish. Enough said. In 2013, I ran the Twin Cities Marathon. I had set PRs in my last 5 marathons, but only by a few seconds. In other words, I had plateaued. The night before the race, I realized that I was holding myself back, afraid that I would go out too fast. In actuality, I was wasting time early in the race when my legs were still fresh and full of energy. The next day, I started the race much faster than I had ever started before. I allowed my body to actually race. I didn't look at my watch. And I cut 7 minutes off my PR time.
Oh my gosh.
I wouldn't have been able to cut 7 minutes off if I had waited until later in the race when I was already exhausted. The lesson? Get started. Get started on that achievement marathon. What are we waiting for? For a time when we're less busy? Ain't gonna happen. If we hold ourselves to our usual schedule and maintain our usual pace, we hold ourselves back. We need to make use of the energy and enthusiasm that we have early in the race. We can cover a lot of ground and build up confidence and momentum for later on in the race. It works for life too. It's never too late to start a goal, but it's better to make a lot of progress while we're still young and before we accumulate a lot of obligations. Don't delay. Get started on the big, important stuff now. Of course, running faster earlier was taking a risk, which takes me to the second lesson, and back in time to the 2007 Chicago Marathon. October 7th, 2007 was a hot day. I lined up with 30,000 other runners with a stretch goal of a BQ. My wife told me to forget about that. As usual, I should have listened to her. By mile 20, I was already suffering from heat exhaustion, but I didn't realize it. I couldn't do simple math. I didn't know how many miles I had left. All I could think about is I better run faster, run faster. I remember running past the mile marker 25 like this, weaving from side to side, deking other runners. And at 25.5 miles, I collapsed. I woke up in an ambulance with an IV in my arm. I was terribly ashamed that I had failed. They sent me a medal. I took my Dremel tool and cut about a mile's worth off of it because I didn't deserve the whole thing. I had DNF'd. And you know what? The only one it mattered to was me. Nobody else was worried about it. My family and friends were just glad that I had survived the ordeal. The lesson? Failure hurts. But the hurt mostly comes from ourselves, not from being judged by other people. In most cases, they couldn't care less. When we work towards goals, we have to consider an occasional failure. If we succeed all the time, we're not pushing ourselves hard enough. We don't know what we're capable of, and we miss out on some important lessons. Take some risks and go for your reach goal. Mark Twain said, in 20 years, you'll be more disappointed in the things you didn't do than in the things that you did. One extra lesson. It's really a powerful feeling to bounce back from failure. The next year, Jody and I both went back to Chicago, and both of us qualified for the 2009 Boston Marathon. At Boston, I learned about finishing strong. Running Boston was pure euphoria. At Boston, the starting corrals went silent for the national anthem and then roared as two fighter jets did a flyover. The gun was sounded and we were off. As we started running, I started seeing milestones that I had read about. I passed a famous father and son team. The father had pushed his paralyzed son's wheelchair in 31 Boston marathons. They did their last one when the father was 74. Talk about finishing strong. At 13 miles, the Wellesley College girls lined the course to cheer and kiss the runners. I skipped that part. They call it the Scream Tunnel, and you can hear it for miles before you get there. The cheering pulls you along, just like the encouragement and help that we get from our family and friends pulls us along in life. At 21 miles, the famous Heartbreak Hill had chalk messages all the way up encouraging the runners. At the top it said, "You just climbed Heartbreak Hill." It's no bigger than the hill out by Zumbro Falls that I run every day. But it's Heartbreak Hill on the Boston Marathon course, and that makes it bigger. All of a sudden, I was in the last 4 miles of the race, and those last 4 miles always stink. Each leg weighs a ton. Every muscle is screaming in agony. The brain is presenting logical reasons to quit. And the GI tract is in outright rebellion. Physical strength doesn't get a runner through that. Only desire and commitment get a runner through the last few miles. And at last, there was the finish line, only 300 yards away. Felt like 300 miles. I looked around and I realized that everyone was finishing strong. At that stage of the race, everyone was running on desire and commitment and wasn't about to give up after so much work. Thanks to the other runners, some chalk messages, the Scream Tunnel, and that dedicated father, I left Boston with a new PR, another BQ, and a medal from my own office wall. In our achievement marathon, there are plenty of opportunities to quit. Our brain is giving us negative self-talk. The schedule is hectic, we're tired, and the stress is high. But we keep going. Desire and commitment carry us to our goal. As we age in our life marathon, our bodies weaken and tire and hurt. The screaming girls are long gone. And we've faced a few heartbreak hills. The finish line sounds pretty good. But a strong spirit lets us finish with the satisfaction of a race well run. In this life, we only get one chance at a PR. But nobody DNFs. What is your marathon? Get started on it, take some risk, and finish strong. Have an incredible race.